Get right into it, guys. This coming weekend, going down at the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas, Nevada, is UFC 290, Volkanovski versus Rodriguez. I cannot wait to talk about this main event, but before that, we have so many other fantastic mixed martial arts fights to talk about. Let us first, before we talk about all the fights, we're going to not dive into a handful of them. Anything that you guys just want to quickly spotlight for our listeners and viewers to check out this weekend at the pay-per-view?
I'll let Mark go because I know at least one of them's his boy, and I know he's got a couple of informations for some of the others.
We said we're going to do his fight, didn't we? Or are we not?
Oh, you're right. You're absolutely right.
Okay, yeah.
But
so
Simon too.
It's a deep card, 14-fight card. We've cut off the first 4 here that we're not going to preview. We're going to do the latter 10 on the card for you guys. So in those first 4, I feel like the most noteworthy thing is Cameron Simon. Cameron Simon is on the card. He's fighting Terrence Mitchell, who you may remember from the flyweight tough season, back when they were trying to get someone to fight DJ. So he's up at bantamweight now, making his debut in the UFC. Simon is definitely due to watch. I do think he wins that fight, but that would be my one note on these fights that we're skipping past here.
Anything else, Omar?
No, that was pretty much it. It's I'm sure a lot of the fights would be nice, but as far as name recognition and ones to look out for, that would probably be the one. Starting off the card, they do have Esteban Ribovics, who also had an interesting couple performances, I feel like, in the UFC so far. But yeah, other than that, I mean, the real meat and potatoes of this card is going to be the 10 fights that we're going to get into.
Okay, let's now get into this. The first fight we are queuing up, going down in the men's, was it flyweight or bantamweight?
Fly. Oh, wait, did they do a catch scenario since Taira just cut weight a few weeks ago? Or no?
I know not.
It is a catch weight. Yep, so it's probably 130 pounds.
Yep.
Oh, okay, that's good. That makes me feel even better about Taira.
Tatsuro Taira taking on Edgar Pitbull Chairez. Omar, can you help me with that name pronunciation, his last name? Is it Chairez?
Chairez?
Gotta be, right? What else could it be?
Let's roll with it. So we have Taira, the 23-year-old out of Naha, Japan, undefeated coming into this fight. 13-0 thus far. He is undefeated in the UFC as well, of course. That's 3-0 in the UFC. 10 of his wins coming by way of finish, knockout, or submission. 3 knockouts, 7 subs. Good stuff coming from him. Taking on the debuting Edgar Chairez out of Baja California, Mexicali, Baja California, Mexico. 10-4 as a pro, 6 subs, 4 knockouts. That's right, no wins going the distance. Mark, start us off. Give us your take and your pick.
All right, Taira is a small favorite of minus 1,000. Edgar Chairez is plus 600 as the underdog. I was a little concerned about Taira cutting weight again, despite just having done it 2 weeks ago when his other fight fell out. So I'm happy to hear that it is at 130 pounds. That definitely helps him a bit. And with that said, I think he should be fine here. I think he probably turns back to Chairez without a ton of trouble. Striking is probably Chairez's best hope, so my guess is Taira aims to take this thing right to the mat, and I'm going to say it's a round 1 submission for Tatsuro Taira.
Omar?
I like it. I also like Taira in this fight as well. I think Chairez is going to have some success probably going forward potentially. I know this is his UFC debut. He didn't do well in the Contender Series. But I don't think that this is going to be the one that he's going to get the win on currently. I think Taira is on a really nice tear. I think his momentum is a little too much. His hype is really nice. And I think that instead of a submission, I think he's actually going to get his KO in this fight and finally put somebody on the mat in the UFC. So I'm going to go with a second round KO.
I also like Taira in this fight. Let's keep it rolling. Still undefeated, getting his hand raised. I'll say he gets a club and sub in round 2. Okay. All right. Hold on one second. Let me get this up here. There it is. Okay, light heavyweight division. Jimmy Crute taking on Alonzo Menifield. A fun one. Jimmy the Brute Crute fighting out of Victoria, Australia. The 27-year-old. He's 12-3 as a pro with 1 draw. looking to get back in the win column after suffering back-to-back losses and then that draw against Alonzo Menifield. They're running it back. That's right. A majority draw. Menifield, once again, queuing him up. 13-3 as a pro, 35 years old, out of Dallas, Texas. 10 knockouts, 2 subs on his record. Mark, start us off.
All right, so it's 2 inches of height for Crute, 2 inches of reach for Menifield. Obviously, we just saw these guys in there very recently. And this one's interesting to me, man. Oh, sorry, I skipped the odds for you guys. It's nearly a pick 'em. Jimmy Crute is favored. He's minus 120. Menifield is minus 105, so they're both minus money. Yeah, it's interesting to me because I thought Crute could beat Menifield the first time. I feel like I don't like where my mic is. There we go. That's better. I thought Crute could beat Menifield the first time. Then he kind of got his ass kicked at certain points when they fought. Obviously ended up with the draw because he did come back in the third, which was encouraging, and then the fence grab from Menifield, we end up with a draw. But, like, he took some damage from Menifield in that fight. But that being said, I can't shake myself from wanting to pick Crute again here. And it may be dumb because his defensive striking leaves a lot to be desired, and we saw that get exposed in the first fight. He gets hit with big shots way too often and way too clean, and Menifield is just not the guy that you want hitting you. But, man, I really thought he could tap Menifield last time, and now that he has a tape of a full fight between the two of them, I think he can tap him this time. I think he can come in with a really good game plan when it comes to his entries, now that he gets to watch this tape back, now that he has a feel for Menifield. And I think he can get it to the mat more often than last time, not get clipped immediately, which obviously changed the whole fight, and be more patient this time, not as hectic of a fight. I really think he can get this thing to the mat, be patient, work till a submission comes, and find it. So, you know, his grappling is still really high level, despite the crazy mess of that last fight. So I'm going to say Jimmy Crute, round 2 submission.
Omar.
I don't hate the take. I think when I look back to that fight, I think when I think about who has to go back home and make more improvements, make more adjustments, I just see the hallmark being a lot more for Jimmy Crute than for Alonzo Menifield, just based on their recent performance. Menifield, on top of that, has also significantly looked better in his last performances than I think he's ever looked before to me. And so that upward trajectory, even before the Jimmy Crute fight, kind of has me in a positive state picking Alonzo Menifield here. And I say that I think having picked Jimmy Crute also the first time, because I'm pretty high on Jimmy Crute. I do really like Jimmy Crute. But I'm not emotional about either one of these guys, so I think I could pick this fight pretty well. And Jimmy Crute, like I said, I think just has a lot more ground to cover to really give Menifield, I think, something to really worry about, right? That third round, I think, was really Menifield having worked so much in those first 2 rounds, and I think he kind of gassed himself out. Obviously, we had the fence grab that didn't help his, the overall decision of that fight, but that fight was Menifield's fight. And I think once we get back into it, I don't see Jimmy Crute all of a sudden being able to take him down at will and being able to do all of these different things to him that he wasn't able to do the first fight, especially considering we've had, 5 months? I can't see it, man. I'm going to go with Menifield here by decision.
Yeah, I think that was Menifield's fight as well. When the scores were read as a majority draw, I saw a lot of disappointment and just defeat on Menifield's face, man. He just was just like, really, I'm so exhausted. I really didn't do enough in that fight. Those
he gave it away.
Rounds, he was really, but he beat Jimmy Crute up bad in those first 2 rounds.
Yeah.
But credit to Jimmy Crute, he stayed in it, and he stayed active enough to get a majority draw to make it into a draw. That being said, I agree with Omar. I don't think Crute is going to make up enough ground. I think the talent and power difference is in favor of Alonzo Menifield. I'm going to see him get his hand raised this time. He leaves no doubt on the judges' scorecards, and I think it will go the distance, though. I'll give it to Menifield by UD. Okay, moving right along. In the women's, what division is this in?
It's fucking Yazmin's division. That's what fucking division it is right now. Let's go.
Yes, women's strawweight division, excuse me. Yazmin Jauregui taking on Denise Gomes. Jauregui, a 24-year-old out of Mexico, undefeated coming into this weekend, 10-0 as a pro, 7 knockouts. She's 2-0 in the UFC, most recently TKOing Estela Nunes back in December. She will be standing across from the Brazilian young prospect in her own right, Denise Gomes, 23 years old, out of Brazil, 7-2, 5 knockouts. She's 1-1 in the UFC after winning on Contender Series, most recently defeating Bruna Brazil by TKO back in April of this year. Omar started off. Your girl, Jauregui, back in the octagon. Give us your take and your pick.
Yeah. You know how I said my last pick I wasn't emotional about? I'm fucking emotional about this one, guys. I love Yazmin Jauregui, man. I loved her since the moment I saw her fight Ismain. I forget her name now.
Yazmin Lucindo.
Thank you. Ismain Lucindo. Both of those women I was super high on just off of their fight together, and I think that that's probably the most difficult fight either woman is going to have for a little bit during their UFC tenure. And I continue that thought process as Jauregui fights Denise Gomes. I think Jauregui here is going to eat. I think this is going to be another performance for her to just really show out and really have a highlight. I think that she's able to use her boxing and use her distance management and her speed to really put the beats on Denise Gomes. So I fully expect Gomes to get her ass whooped. I think Jauregui is going to KO her in 2 rounds, and this will be the first KO that Denise has suffered since the beginning of her professional MMA career.
Mark?
So Jauregui is -400 as the favorite. Gomes is +300 as the dog. There's 1 inch of height, 1 inch of reach on the Jauregui side. I can't say that name quick. I need to say it slow. My mouth isn't built that way. Yeah, I am in the same boat for sure. We've been high on Jauregui. Omar has been really high on her. I think that she will outmatch Gomes technique-wise, and I think what my pick is going to be is just that she kind of dictates and controls the fight for the most part and rolls to a decision victory. But I will say that Denise Gomes showed in her last fight that she is in there to march you down. And if that's the case and she fights that style of fight against Jauregui, it very easily could be a highlight reel knockout for Yazmin. So, debated it, but I will say UD.
I think Jauregui is going to keep rolling here and stay undefeated, and I think she's going to get her hand raised. Let's go with the knockout finish. Let's go round 2 TKO over Gomes. Now let us move on. Yeah, we are unanimous for Jauregui. Let us move on to the welterweight division. Della, Maddalena taking on the young debuting prospect or UFC debuting prospect in Josiah, Harrell. So we have Della Maddalena, a favorite on the show, I think I'm confident in saying. The 26-year-old out of Perth, Australia. His record, an impressive one, 14-2 with 11 knockouts. Add 2 subs to that. Only 1 win going the distance. In his 2 losses, he's been finished both times, once by knockout, once by submission. They were the very first 2 professional bouts of his career. He's gone 14-0 since then. Most recently, clubbing and subbing Randy Brown back in February of this year at UFC 284. He will be going up against the debuting Josiah Harrell. Muscle Hamster is his nickname. He is undefeated himself, 7-0, fighting out of Columbus, Ohio. 4 knockouts, 3 subs. All his wins are finishes. Mark, start us off. Give us your take over Della Maddalena taking on the debuting Harrell.
His nickname is Muscle Hamster. Wasn't that someone else's nickname?
Dog, I thought it said Muscle Hammer until he said something, and then I had to look back, and I was like, "What the fuck?"
Oh, I just googled it. Yeah, it's a running back who's playing the NFL. I knew that nickname.
Funny.
Yeah, I have a hunch we may all be unanimous again on this one. JDM is -1100. Josiah Harrell is +650. Obviously, this stinks. We went from the fantastic matchup of JDM and Sean Brady. Then we heard rumors of Holland stepping in, of Chris Curtis stepping in. I feel like there was one other big name I'm blanking on. But, we end up with Josiah Harrell. I'm not sure why we couldn't get one of those bigger ones made. International Fight Week. You would have thought maybe they could work something out, but we did not. We get an unproven fighter here. He usually fights at lightweight. He's going to be 4 inches shorter than Jack. He's going to be at a 6-inch reach disadvantage. He's stepping in on short notice. He fought like 3 weeks ago. He's walking in there against one of the greatest prospects on God's green earth at the moment. With all that being said, now he'll win by like cartwheel kick or some shit. But yeah, I'm clearly going to go with Jack Della Maddalena. I will say by round 1 knockout because that is what he does, and Harrell should not be able to stop it.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, if anything, that Jack is going up against an undefeated prospect. So, it's hard to – we don't have much data on how this guy can lose this fight. But how do you not go with Jack? I mean, the guy fights in sort of a magical way. Got to think he's going to find a finish again over this guy in hand. Josiah Harrell's first loss of his career. If Sherdog's information is exhaustive, Harrell hasn't lost ever in his pro or amateur careers. That being said, got to think Jack, who is so accurate and such great power for 170, got to think he's going to find a finish here. I'll say round 1 knockout for Maddalena, really surprising Harrell and showing that there are levels to this for the undefeated youth. Omar, bring us home for this one.
So the easy answer is Jack Della Maddalena, right? Like that's where we're all picking. That's what I'm going to pick as well. But I want to give a little bit of context here as to what's happening, right? The fight is short notice, and so we're bringing somebody in for Jack Della Maddalena to still fight, right? International Fight Week is too big for you to just be like, well, I guess we'll reschedule it for a fucking card that no one gives a shit about, right? It's too big. It's a big spot for Jack Della Maddalena. So many eyes will be on him, and I think more than anything, it's going to be his ability to perform that's going to make the big difference. Josiah Harrell, though, is a guy that hasn't lost yet in his career, has also basically killed everybody in his career, and you may have already seen this dude in a viral video in the MMA world. Not too long ago, like a month ago, there was a video of a man inside of the LFA cage who picked up a gentleman and ran him through the cage door. The gentleman who ran him through the cage door was Josiah Harrell. So we know that the man's got tenacity. We know the man's there to fight. I do think this is one of those, there are levels to this thing, so I don't think there's going to be a lot there. But to think that there is not going to be a real threat in Josiah Harrell that Jack Della Maddalena has to deal with, I think is a little naive. And on top of that, there's not a ton of video on Josiah Harrell. And so, Jack Della Maddalena is not going to come up with a whole new game plan and study all this, all of these things and things like that on Josiah Harrell. So he's got to go in and he's got to rely on his own skills and his own ability to finish, and can't really worry about Josiah Harrell too much. But like I said, there are levels to this, and I think that Jack Della Maddalena is at that point where this fight shouldn't be one that he can't handle, even if it takes him a little while to do so. But I think it will. I don't think it'll be quick. I think he will want to feel him out and just make sure that he's approaching the fight the right way. So I'm going to go with KO round 2.
Oh, baby. All right. Let's move on to the welterweight division once again. The veteran and former UFC welterweight champion Robbie Lawler taking on Niko Price. So ruthless Robbie Lawler, the 41-year-old out of San Diego, California. 29-16 as a pro with 1 no contest. Most recently coming off of a loss against Brian Barberino, where he got TKO'd by Barberino back in July of last year. So 1 year almost to the day for Robbie Lawler. Niko Price, the hybrid, the 33-year-old out of Cape Coral, Florida, 15-6, 2 no contests, coming off of a loss against Phil Rowe by TKO back in December. Omar, staying with you, give us your take and your pick for Lawler versus Price.
Yeah, this one on a personal note kind of sucks. I love Niko Price. I'm a big fan of Robbie Lawler, obviously, so to see one of these guys have to lose, especially in the trajectory that they've both kind of been going in, kind of sucks. Robbie Lawler obviously is the guy that has the equalizers in his hand, right? The man can knock anybody out if he lands flush. Niko Price is that awkward dude. He's a guy that's very difficult to prepare for because you can't get training partners that do wild shit like Niko Price does. And once you start getting into chaos and things like that, you know, it becomes an entirely different ballgame. Robbie Lawler is one of the kings of chaos, but his chaos is a lot less scrambly and overly wild than somebody like a Niko Price or even like a Brandon Royval as an example. I think Robbie Lawler's at a point in his career where he is obviously very beatable. There was a point where it was very difficult to see anybody really being able to put paws on Robbie Lawler and put him out. But I think Niko Price, I think as far as levels are concerned, I think Niko Price has seen so many looks and is so versatile that while he does obviously have there's obviously the opportunity for him to get knocked out by Robbie Lawler, I do still think that he has a good chance to get wild and get weird and get crazy, and maybe even confuse Robbie Lawler a little bit enough where he can win 2 out of the 3 rounds. So I'm going to go with Niko Price here by unanimous decision.
Yeah, I feel like, I hate seeing guys hold on this long. I mean, Lawler is now in his 40s, the former UFC champ. I believe that Robbie Lawler gave us maybe the greatest title run that we've ever seen in terms of, obviously it wasn't the longest run. Other guys have had much longer title runs than he had, but in terms of the quality and entertainment factor of all of his title fights, I call it like the greatest title run ever, like the most memorable title run ever. His fights with Rory McDonald, with Carlos Condit, with Johnny Hendricks. I mean, all of them are classics. Like all of his title fights are classics.
Yeah.
So he will be missed when he decides to lay the gloves down. That being said,
that's what I was just going to say. This is it. If you guys don't know that, this is his
Oh,
retirement.
Is he done?
Yeah, he has said it. This is his last fight.
Oh, my bad.
Oh, well, fuck.
That being said, I think that. I think that
Well, because
Niko
I want
Price-
him to win. I want him to win on his way out. You know what I mean? Like, fuck.
Yeah.
Fuck.
I think this is not a bad matchup for him to try to get the win, but that being said, I do see Niko Price getting his hand raised in this one. He's just the attributes he's going to have over Lawler, the length, the busyness that he's going to have. I don't think he's going to get the finish, but I think he's going to land more on Robbie, make the fight awkward, make it his kind of fight, and I'm going to say Niko by UD. Mark?
Okay, so Niko's actually a pretty decent favorite. He's minus 270. Robbie Lawler is plus 220.
Wow.
Disrespect.
Niko's
Wow.
1 inch taller. He's got 2 inches of reach on Robbie. I actually thought he had more than that, so I was surprised it was only
'cause he has
2.
very long arms.
I like Niko Price. I've picked him plenty of times on here, but as soon as this was made, I was like, man, I feel like that's kind of the right type of matchup that a 41-year-old Robbie Lawler could win. Like, and I know he was finished by Barberena in his last one, but he was landing a fuck ton on Barberena to the point that Barberena almost had to say, I'm going to walk forward and hope my head doesn't fall off because it's the only way I'm going to get to Robbie Lawler. And if he's landing like that on Niko Price, I don't know that he stands up the same way Barberena did. He's tough as hell, too. Obviously, we've seen him in wars. But I kind of think he slows more. I think the arms start to look heavy sometimes when he's getting beat on. And it sounds counterintuitive because Niko Price is a great third-round fighter. He always comes out hard at the end of the fights. But I kind of feel like maybe Lawler could get him out before we get there. And I was torn on it. And that was before I realized this was Robbie Lawler's retirement fight. And then once I saw that, I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I was already thinking it could go that way. I'm going to pull the trigger. Robbie Lawler, round 2, knockout.
Wow. Let's go. Ruthless. Love him. Okay, moving on up to the middleweight division. UFC 290. Bo Nickal taking on Tresean, Mr. Vicious Gore. So Bo Nickal, the superstar prospect. There are many. There are prospects and there are superstars, but there aren't many superstar prospects. The 27-year-old out of State College, Pennsylvania, undefeated at 4-0 as a pro. Quickly recap his career. He got 1 professional win at IFC 3. Then he got 2 back-to-back wins, both at Dana White's Contender Series. and then his first UFC win over Jamie Pickett back in March of this year. All finishes either one knockout, 3 subs. So he's not gone to the judges' scorecards yet as an amateur or as a pro. He will be taking on another young prospect in Tresean Gore, the 29-year-old out of South Carolina, 4-2 as a professional, coming off of a win over Josh Fremd back in October of 2022. His record stands at 1-2 thus far in the UFC. He lost his first 2 UFC bouts against Brian Battle and Cody Brundage. Omar, start us off. Give us your take and your pick of Nickal versus Gore.
To me, this is such a hard fight to pick because Tresean Gore is talented. He's a very talented prospect. He's had his loss during his Ultimate Fighter finale. He obviously had his loss to Cody Brundage. I can't say that kid's name to save my life. And then just recently had his good performance against Josh Fremd. But then you have Bo Nickal here, who, like you said, is very hyped. Very hyped, doesn't have a ton of experience in the MMA world, but the experience he does have are all finishes. And it's all been on the back of the technique that he brings with his wrestling. Tresean Gore, I believe, is also a wrestler to a certain extent, if I'm not mistaken. I think he does have a wrestling background somewhere. But I don't think from what I understand, Bo Nickal seems to be on a different level with the type of collegiate wrestling that he brings to the table. And his grappling skills in general on the ground. So, I think Bo Nickal can get it done. I'm not like super high on Bo Nickal, and I think a part of it is because everybody wants me to be super fucking high on Bo Nickal, and I'm just like, no, I'm not ready yet. I need to see some more shit. You're not just gonna throw random dudes at him and then him choking people out and then be like, see, I told you, he's like the greatest ever. I'm not ready for that. But I do think that this is a fight that Bo Nickal can win. So I'm going to go with Bo Nickal by second round submission here.
I appreciate your judiciousness in assessing this young guy's talent. That being said, similar to I like a guy like Chimaev, I was super high on when he came into the UFC. And a lot of people were trying to be like, pump the brakes. He just defeated Reese McKee in a minute. But it's Reese McKee. But I'm like, it's the eye test. It's like the way he's fighting these other, sure, like lower level professional fighters, but professional fighters. And he's walking through them like he's fighting a middle schooler. And that's what we have here in Bo Nickal. Bo Nickal is like the American Chimaev, man. He just cuts through these guys like a hot knife through butter, man. So that being said, yes, I agree. Tresean Gore, talented guy. That being said, I think that Bo Nickal is going to eat on Saturday. And I want a Bo Nickal finish. I want a first-round finish, and I want a big call-out immediately after on the mic. Let's go. Bo Nickal, round 1, rear naked choke. Let's go. Mark.
Speaking of Bo Nickal hype, he is a minus 1250 favorite.
That's fucking crazy.
That's a little.
That's crazy, dog.
He as the underdog, plus 750. 1 inch of height and reach on the Bo Nickal side. And yeah, for me, it is also the eye test. Or even more so, the way that Bo Nickal has picked up MMA. Like, we've seen dudes who were super high level at something, transition to MMA, and there's bumps in the road and there's whatever. And I know he hasn't fought anyone who's, remotely established yet, if we're being honest. But the way he has seemed to so naturally pick up MMA and striking and all of this for a guy who was purely a wrestler for so long is enough to kind of make me be like, oh shit, this could be interesting fast. So, there's work to be done. There's a lot to prove still. This is a good next step. But I'm definitely on Bo Nickal here. Tresean Gore has looked good at times through tough and through a 3-fight UFC career. Obviously, he's only 1-2. But he did look really good against Josh Fremd in his last fight. You can see potential in him, but, he has to fight Bo Nickal now, and I don't think it's going to go well. He doesn't have the requisite wrestling or grappling to deter what Bo wants to do, I don't think. I think he's got to come out and kind of just throw hammers and hope one lands, because once Bo gets a hold of him, I think it's going to be downhill pretty fast. So I will say Bo Nickal round 1 submission.
And here's my thing about Bo Nickal, right? It's the kid is obviously skilled. It's not like you can't watch him fighting and be like, oh, he's trash. Like that's not that can't be a real thing. But at the same time, he hasn't fought anybody who even on paper is supposed to stop his wrestling. So when somebody does, what happens? And that's really where I'm at. And that's why I'm not ready to just dive in head first. You know what I mean?
The question is, though, who can until we hit like the top 10?
Right.
And maybe people can. I'm not saying
There you go.
the answer
Right.
is no. I'm just saying if his wrestling might be that unstoppable.
Sure. That's a valid
It'll be
point.
interesting to see if and when somebody like punches him in the face to see how he reacts to it. Obviously.
100%.
Yeah. But there are guys. I mean, there's guys in that, top 30-ish area who like can wrestle and do carry power. And I'm sure that's maybe where he'll go next. Like if he gets a win here, it'll probably be a guy who fits that mold.
Yeah. Okay, moving on to the lightweight division. Man, I love this card. What a stacked card this is. So many great fights.
Yeah, it's a shame we lost the JDM Brady one because that
Facts.
was like putting it over the top. To have that
Yeah,
on the
man.
undercard was like silliness.
Yep. Okay, Jalin the Tarantula Turner taking on Dan the Hangman Hooker. So Jalin Turner, 28-year-old out of San Bernardino, California, 13-6 as a pro, 9 knockouts. Looking to get back in the win column, losing a split decision to Mateusz Gamrot back in March, taking on the Kiwi, Dan the Hangman Hooker out of Auckland, New Zealand, 33 years old, 22-12 as a pro, 11 knockouts, add 7 submission victories to that. Got back in the win column back in November against Claudio Puelles, finishing him with a body kick and subsequent strikes. Mark, go first this time. Give us your take and your pick. Turner versus Hooker.
This is a great fight, perfect fight. I'm glad they went back to it. Obviously, they tried to book this one once before. Odds are a little wider than I thought we'd see. Jalin Turner's minus 250 as the favorite. Dan Hooker is a plus 200 underdog. Size-wise, they have the same reach here. Turner is 3 inches taller. And, yeah, this is a tough one for me to call. I kind of debated this, but I keep ending up in the same place. I love Dan Hooker. Even at his low points, I've been a believer in the game of Dan Hooker. He just looked great in his last fight, which really makes me want to believe here. And I had picked him to do that, so it felt good to see him come out and look that dominant. But Jalin Turner has also shown us how good he is and how dangerous he is, so it's a scary pick to make. And they're honestly very similar in a lot of ways. The danger they carry on the feet, the way they can snatch up a sub, the way they can scramble. I think for me, this one really may just come down to which man can absorb more damage and keep going, or which man can avoid getting smoked by like one clean shot. And I think in that regard, I'm more worried about Dan Hooker because he gets hit, man. We've seen it more and more recently. I think it's easy to forget because he was in a matchup in the last fight against Claudio Puelles where he didn't even have to really worry about getting hit because that's just not what Puelles was trying to do in there. So he kind of got to shine. But he gets caught a bunch. Jalin Turner's long as hell, so he shouldn't have a problem getting to him. And for the most part, the way to beat Jalin Turner has been to out-wrestle him, and I don't really think Hooker is going to look to go that route. I mean, he could, but I don't know if he is that far beyond what Jalin Turner offers on the ground to win that way. So I think it's going to mostly play out on the feet, and I think I just see Dan getting clipped at some point in a competitive fight. But I think the wear and tear is getting to be a little bit more than I wish it was for Dan Hooker, and I'll say Turner gets it done. I will say round 2 TKO Jalin Turner.
Omar?
Yeah, man, I've been a Jalin Turner guy for a long time now before he was ranked and kind of leading all the way up to this point. And we're at these moments now where it's difficult and painful for me to pick against guys that I really, really like. But just like Mark, I think that this fight favors Turner a little bit more. I think the little bit of size advantage that he has with the way both of them strike, especially with their distance management, I think will end up working in Jalin Turner's favor. And I think both of them are aggressive. They're both very aggressive guys who like to strike, who like to throw a lot of big shots in there. And again, to Mark's point, I think where we really saw Jalin Turner have a hole in his game was with not even necessarily the wrestling, but the Gamrot type of wrestling, right? That continuous, I'm going to take you down. Oh, you got back up? Well, I'm taking you down again. Oh, you're back up? Well, I'm taking you down again. And, it is one thing for a Jalin Turner in that position to be able to keep getting up and keep working and keep trying to do something in those positions and not succeeding, but it also is something you have to take in consideration from the other side of that coin, where somebody like a Mateusz Gamrot can put that pace on continuously, because wrestling like that is also something that's not easy to do, even when you're the one doing it and winning. And I don't see Dan Hooker being able to apply that kind of pressure, that kind of consistent wrestling. It's just not his game. And I think him switching up his game is probably going to cost him way more than it would be worth. So I don't see that being the case. And I think that Jalin Turner here, like I said, is just going to have a little bit more edge over Dan Hooker. So I'm going to go with Jalin Turner here by a very, very closely contested decision, unanimous decision.
This is a fight where I don't want to see either of these guys lose. Yeah. I'm a big fan. I'm a believer in Jalin Turner and his ability at 155 to keep marching up the rankings of the Shark Tank that is the lightweight division. Because of his striking prowess, because of his attributes, being 6'3" at lightweight is tremendous. Gotta love Dan Hooker, man. The guy, he's a fan favorite and rightfully so. He's a vet. Plus all the stuff that he went through, like in COVID and like being separated from his family for forever. You just root for the guy. I just want to see him succeed at life. That being said, I'm going to go with Jalin Turner for this one. I loved Mark's assessment. I think that they're both proficient strikers, but I think Dan is the one who's going to probably get caught and maybe crumble first. So I'll say Jalin Turner towards the end of round one catches Dan Hooker and gets a really nice first round finish.
That's how you know Mike's a fan. He just combined Jalin Turner and Dan Hooker. He doesn't want anybody to lose.
That's right. Okay. Going on to what easily could be a main event on any card. Robert Whittaker taking on Dricus du Plessis. Whew. We have Australia. We have South Africa. Let's go. Bobby Knuckles, the Reaper, the 32-year-old out of South Wales, Sydney, Australia. 24-6 as a pro. 9 knockouts, 5 submissions added to that. Coming off of a very nice UD over Marvin Vettori back in September of last year. He will be taking on the rising South African Dricus du Plessis out of Pretoria, South Africa. 19-2 as a pro. Damn, what a record. 18 knockouts, 10 subs, only one of his wins going the distance. The man is a finisher. He's a bruiser at middleweight. Most recently finishing Derek Brunson in the second round. Omar, start us off this time. Give us your take and your pick of du Plessis versus Whittaker.
I mean, I'm so interested to see what the line is, to be honest, because Whittaker is that dude at middleweight. If there is no Izzy, Robert Whittaker is your champion. Robert Whittaker hasn't lost to anybody since, other than Izzy, I should say, since 2014. Wonderboy Thompson was the last person to beat him, and that was in a completely different division he shouldn't have even been in. And once he got to 185, he's been murking motherfuckers ever since, and Izzy is the only person who's been standing in his way. I don't think that changes here. Yeah, go for it.
So, yeah, the bookies are giving the appropriate respect to Robert Whittaker. He and the bettors, I guess. Who knows what it opened at. But Robert Whittaker is minus 380. Dricus is plus 290.
No, that's about right. It's a tough task because when you really sit back and you think about exactly where Dricus is gonna have areas of success, I don't think anybody will die on that sword. I really don't. I like Dricus's biggest attribute, in my opinion, is his ground game and his wrestling. And I think he gets not one off on Robert Whittaker, for being honest. I would be wholly surprised if he gets a single takedown on Robert Whittaker. And I think everywhere in between there, Robert Whittaker pieces up Dricus du Plessis with the hands, with the feet, with the explosions. We're going to see Robert Whittaker bouncing. We're going to see Dricus trying to get some kind of stability in that in that square off, and Robert Whittaker is going to close distance, and he's going to crack him, and that is going to be the entire story for that fight. And I think every time a takedown is had or attempted, Robert Whittaker is going to be able to stuff them, and he's going to make Dricus pay. And I think the longer that goes on, we're going to see Dricus begin to crumble. I give Dricus credit as far as his toughness. I don't think he's going to get finished. I don't think he's going to give up in that fight, no matter how much damage he has, unless he gets put out. So I will give the decision out of respect to Dricus, but I think Robert Whittaker takes that one home, and it's all 5 rounds for Robert Whittaker. 50-45.
Mark?
Wait,
so
wait. Is this 3 fucking rounds?
3 fucking rounds, yeah.
Oh, for
I didn't
God's
realize
sake.
that. Yeah, that sucks.
All right, 30-27, though.
Right? I mean, it's certainly 3 rounds, right? It's got to be.
It does not have to be. It could absolutely be 5 rounds, them bastards.
No, but I'm saying we would have heard about it if it was 5.
No, yeah, I know. Yeah.
Yeah, yet another example of my point that fights involving a top 5 fighter should be 5 rounds. Yep, 3 rounds. Yeah, so as you heard, almost 4-1 favorite for Whittaker. 1 inch of height and 2.5 inches of reach on the Dricus side of things, so he is a bit bigger. He's also the larger man frame-wise. So, yeah, would it be fun here if Dricus showed out and he beat Robert Whittaker and set up an enormous fight with Israel Adesanya? It sure fucking would. Am I going to pick Robert Whittaker to lose a fight? I certainly am not. The dude is so good. He continually shows it against every single opponent aside from Izzy. I mean, he even showed it against Izzy in the second fight, if we're being honest. He looked pretty good in that fight.
Yeah.
We've said before that he's beaten a bunch of these guys better than Izzy has beaten them. I mean, he's unreal. And I just don't see what Dricus du Plessis has that's going to allow him to overcome the gulf of technique that lies between him and Robert Whittaker. And I don't want to knock Dricus. He has been great. He's been very impressive in the way he's gone through these fights. He absorbs damage. He's strong as hell. He does not stop coming forward. He carries a lot of natural power. He's an imposing wrestler, but not against Robert Whittaker. Whittaker's just not going to allow himself to be taken down outside of maybe a random one at some point in time. He is going to be better on the feet, plain and simple. He will be a step ahead. He'll be making Dricus miss. Dricus's punches will be, finishing an inch or 2 away from Whittaker's face as Whittaker darts to the outside. He is going to land to the head of Dricus. He'll mix up his shots. I mean, think about the way that Till was landing against Dricus when he was able to ever stay on his friggin' feet.
In that one round.
Whittaker can certainly do that. And he's not going to fall apart under the pressure of Dricus either, the way other guys have. That's what Dricus does to people. He's so composed, and he just keeps coming through the damage, and guys crumble. Robert Whittaker is not going to crumble. He will be there for all 15 minutes if he needs to be. So I will go with Robert Whittaker UD as well. I'll just add one thing that I just thought of as I was going through this that I don't know if you guys have watched Countdown. They gave the stats on Dricus du Plessis' nose. Remember we've talked about this before, how he has said the reason it always looks like he's like huffing and puffing in there is because he has a lot of trouble breathing through his nose and he needs to get it operated on. We talked about this after his last fight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But he finally did get the operation. And they said that the stats pre-operation were that one of his nostrils was getting 0% oxygen. So basically a useless nostril. And the other was getting 8% oxygen.
What?
So 8 out of a possible 200%. So 4% oxygen was going through this man's nose through his UFC career thus far. So, and now supposedly it's 100%. So will we see superhuman Dricus now that he can breathe through his nose? I don't know. I did think that was mind-blowing to hear that he was getting 4% oxygen through his fucking nose. But the pick is Robert Whittaker, UD. Just felt like I had to share that because it's pretty crazy.
We are unanimous, taking him by UD. Unanimous by unanimous. I mean, I like seeing the fresh blood climbing up middleweight with du Plessis. But that being said, I think Whittaker he's so talented, as he's shown over the years, and I think he's going to be better everywhere. The only edge I give du Plessis is in brute strength and power. What do we say about his last couple fights? That like du Plessis is like he has the best worst gas. He has the best worst cardio. Like he always fights like he's gassed, but he just has this will about him.
Well, that's what I mean. I wonder if it's going to look the same now that he can actually breathe.
Like, will his mouth actually be closed in this fight?
Yeah, and he won't.
Is it
look
possible?
So, like, you know,
Maybe he'll be breathing through his nose a little bit more, but Duplessis always comes in shape. He always comes correct with with the great cardio, with a tremendous will and competitiveness. Great power for the division. But I'm not picking against Bobby Knuckles, man. Like he said, I think after he fought, was it a Vittori or Cannonier? He's like, I make people hate fighting.
Vittori. Yep.
He's such a great kickboxer, and he's so proficient everywhere. Got to see he's getting his hand raised in this one, so I'm going to go as well. Whittaker by unanimous decision. Let's move on now to the co-main event, UFC 290. Brandon Moreno taking on Alexandre Pantoja. Rematch coming up. Brandon Moreno, the assassin baby, out of Tijuana, Baja California, Mexico. 29 years old, 21-6 with 2 draws, 5 knockouts, 11 more wins by submission victory, coming off back-to-back wins over Kai Kara France, and then winning the title back from Davison Figueiredo back in January. He will be standing across from Alexandre Pantoja, who defeated Brandon Moreno back in 2018. Pantoja, the 33-year-old out of Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, the Cannibal, his nickname, 25-5 as a professional, with 8 knockouts and 10 submission wins on his record. He's riding a 3-fight win streak coming into this title fight this weekend over Manel Kape, Brandon Royval, and Alex Perez back in July. Omar, start us off. Is it Viva Mexico, or is Pantoja going to upset your boy?
We're back at emotional here, gentlemen. I ain't picking against fucking Brandon Moreno. It's not going to happen. I will say that Pantoja is a very, very dangerous opponent. And knowing full well that Brandon Moreno has now dropped 2 fights to Pantoja, one of which was an exhibition, whatever, and tough, but still a fight that he definitely lost and got submitted on. Last one that they had, obviously, Brandon Moreno lost a unanimous decision. Alexandre Pantoja is a bad, bad dude, man, and he hasn't gotten any worse. His recent win against Alex Perez was disgusting. His recent win against Brandon Royval, also disgusting. Was also able to beat Manel Kape, who we also know was kind of on the rise a little bit, was able to kind of put that one to bed. And Brandon Moreno is a guy that consistently exceeds expectations, and I think because of his demeanor and his lack of shit talking and like all of the things that make Brandon Moreno the guy that we love, there's also a lot of that assumption that he's not that dangerous, right? You know, he's a nice guy, he's this, he's that, he's the other, but you know, he's not really that nice. And look at him now. He's a champion. He's a beast. He's a guy that has now finished Davison Figueiredo, who at the time was considered to be like one of the best, or probably still considered to be one of the best flyweights in the world, but somebody who people couldn't beat, and he's beaten him now. You know, Kai Kara France with the win on that. So Brandon Moreno has definitely exceeded expectations where there were none for him, and he's in a very unique position now where he can continue to build on his legacy against somebody who he has now lost twice against. It's a big order. It's a tall order. I actually don't really know if he's going to be able to do it, but we're going to run with it. So Brandon Moreno, split decision. I wouldn't be surprised, but I think he takes at least 3 out of the 5 rounds.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. I think that Moreno evens this one with professional fights with Pantoja. Yes, Pantoja's so dangerous. Yes, Pantoja beat him before. But, man, Moreno has gotten better and better and better. And the guy is just electric now. Pantoja, though, he is stout and built for the division and very durable. And I don't see Moreno getting the finish on this one. I agree with you. I say Moreno guts this one out over a very tough and very dangerous Pantoja and gets a 48-40. What is it? 48-46 on the scorecards? Three rounds to 2.
48-47.
Thank you.
Have you watched any MMA before? Or?
Mark, what's your take and pick? Take a pick.
All right, so Brandon Moreno, getting some respect. He is minus 200 as the favorite.
Okay. Okay.
Pantoja is plus 165 as the underdog. 2 inches of height and 2 inches of reach on the Brandon Moreno side, which is not. I kind of was envisioning them as being the same size. Didn't realize Moreno's a bit bigger there. Here we go. I am so pumped for this fight. It's not every day you get to see a champion going into a title fight trying to avenge an 0-2 record against the challenger, and that's what we have here.
That's true.
So that's a cool dynamic. I'm also really glad to see Alexandre Pantoja get his title shot because he is that good. He has been good for a while. He absolutely deserves it, and I'm glad he can finally check that box of getting to fight for a UFC title. It's tough, man. If Brandon is willing to grapple in this fight, which he very well may be, it's going to get really interesting because Pantoja is disgusting on the mat. If Moreno's game plan is to really fight to keep this thing standing for the most part, then I think we're still in for a great fight because Pantoja, I think, is still improving on the feet every time we see him. He's getting more and more comfortable in the striking. I do think Moreno probably has an edge there. It seems like his boxing has advanced to a point where you would think he's at least a little bit ahead of Pantoja in a pure striking match. But, man, as Omar said, Pantoja is walking through people right now. I mean, just devouring dudes. The way that he beat Alex Perez and Brandon Royval, it's like they weren't even in there, especially Perez. And that Manel Kopp fight, again, I'm going back to Pantoja's striking improving. They struck the whole fight. He didn't beat Manel Kopp by grappling. He beat Manel Kopp in a striking match, which is pretty fucking impressive. So, I don't know. I've been going back and forth the whole time. I feel like I don't even want to pick this. I want to watch the embeddeds and see what kind of feeling I get as I watch the embeddeds. I do trust Moreno more cardio-wise, I think, as the fight goes on. But on the flip side of that, I feel like Pantoja is the guy who's more likely to find a finish, especially by choke. He's so good at taking the back and taking it when the tiniest little opportunity presents itself. And I know Moreno's finished 2 dudes in a row, but for some reason I don't see him finishing Pantoja with strikes. Pantoja's a pretty durable guy. So I'm torn. It's one of those fights where I feel like you pick it and then the other guy wins and you're going to be like, how the fuck did I not pick that guy? He's so good. But I'm going to do it. I'm going to go Pantoja, man. I just think it's his time, and I don't think that Brandon Moreno is an unbeatable type of champion. So I'm going to say Pantoja can hang enough on the feet, find some success, create some scramble opportunities, and take the back in one of them. If it makes the cards, I think it's probably Moreno, but I'll say Pantoja finds the back and finds a choke. Round 3 rear naked choke.
Dude, come on, man. Do it for Mexico.
You know what's crazy about this whole thing, though, is Brandon Moreno has not been finished in his professional career.
Wow,
Right?
and I
No,
expect him to get finished.
no submissions, no knockouts. Only decisions has he been beaten in his professional career.
Well, I was going to say, Pantoja did choke him out on tough, though.
But isn't that crazy, though, right? Like, the only choke that he has, even on his fucking resume, is from Pantoja, but it doesn't even affect the actual, like, professional score for his record.
Oh, my God, dude.
What happened?
Tresean Gore's out.
Oh, come on.
I literally just got the fucking...
Boo.
Boo.
God,
Fuck, man.
hard.
Are we going to get a replacement for Nickal?
It says they're actively looking for a replacement. They want to keep him on the card.
Hell yeah,
my
man.
God.
That sucks.
Gore was like, nah, I'm not doing this. Fuck this.
He saw the odds. He was like, plus 750. Fuck that.
Oh, that's balls.
Did it say he's injured? Did it say what he
It
injured?
doesn't even say. It just says he's out.
He's
And
just
they're
out.
actively looking for a replacement because
That
they want to keep
sucks.
Nickal on the card.
That sucks.
Oh, my God.
Okay, let's do this main event time, and then let's get out of here because I got to go enjoy some Independence Day festivities with my family.
I think you're
saying
saying
we all
go
do.
enjoy some independence. I would have liked it.
Independence. I'm going to go launch $500 worth of fireworks off my back deck.
That's what I'm talking
Yeah, baby. Fucking
Actually,
America. Let's
No,
go.
not me. No, I'm kidding. I'm not going to do that.
You should totally do that.
Main event. I can't believe this fucking card is so stacked.
Falling apart
Alexandre.
by the second.
Yeah, right. Alexandre the Great Volkanovski taking on Yair El Bandera Rodriguez. Unifying the belts. The champ versus the interim champ. Volkanovski out of Windang. I didn't know that was where he's from. Windang, New South Wales, Australia. 34 years old. Is 25-2 as a pro with 12 knockouts and 3 subs on his record. Coming off of a loss against Islam Makhachev when he tried to move up and become a champ back in February. Was a great fight, though. He did not lose any stock, in my opinion, in that loss to Makhachev. No. Challenging for the lightweight belt.
Might gain stock.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Hell yeah. Before that, he's just been on an absolute tear. I don't have time to count the consecutive fight win streak that he was on, if you guys know off the top of your heads. That being said, he is still the reigning featherweight champ in the UFC. He'll be standing across from the fantastic kickboxer out of Mexico, Yair Rodriguez, 30 years old, 15-3 with 1 no contest, coming off back-to-back wins against Brian Ortega and Josh Emmett. The Josh Emmett fight was for the interim belt in the featherweight division, in which he finished Josh Emmett in the second round by triangle choke. So Yair using those long limbs now to hunt for submissions on the ground. Very exciting stuff. Very intriguing matchup. Mark, why don't you start us off? Give us the odds, your opinions, and ultimately your pick for this great featherweight title fight between Volkanovski and Rodriguez.
There's some surprisingly wide odds on this card, and this one is not... I mean, I guess not surprising because Volk is unreal, but he is minus 400. Yair Rodriguez is plus 300.
I don't hate that, to be honest.
Yeah. All right, it's going to be a 5-inch height advantage for Yair Rodriguez, so pretty big. Reach actually favors Volk by half an inch, being a long motherfucker that he is.
Wow.
But certainly not the leg reach, so the legs of Yair are going to be hugely in play, as they always are, but maybe even more so here with that extra height that Yair will carry in this matchup. Yair's unreal. He truly is. He looks super dialed in at this stage of his career. He absolutely feels like a guy who is special enough to be a champion. I do think it's absolutely the right time for him to be running into Volk. I think this is the best Yair there has ever been, and that prior Yairs would have had less of a chance than this one does. But the issue is he's got to fight Volk. He's in a division where the champion is Alexander Volkanovski, and I don't know how you pick against Volkanovski right now. He hammers it home how elite he is more and more every single time we watch him. Even in that loss to Islam, as we said, I think his stock rose. I do think it could be hairy early, like in the first 10 minutes of this fight, as Volk has to adapt to the crazy timing and whirlwind blender striking that is Yair Rodriguez. I do think he may have to go through some shit. I could see it being really competitive, and maybe he even gets caught. But even if he does get caught bad, is Yair going to get him out of there? I don't know, man. Volk's chin is so good, and he recovers so fast historically. I just think even if Yair does land something clean in those first 1 or 2 rounds, that I kind of see Volk scrambling through a couple hairy moments and then like clinching up or separating and kind of like giving a little oh fuck smirk, like I'm fine, but that was not what I was going for there. You know, I don't know if I see Yair truly putting him out. And beyond that, I think Volk gets right back to work. And I do think as this goes on and he gets Yair's timing down a bit more, I think it starts to swing more toward Volk as the fight goes on. The cardio, I think, is in his favor. The fight IQ, I think, is in his favor. Just his mentality. He's just this overwhelming force that I think you can only hold back for so long. So I think it starts to swing his way. I think he'll be ripping the leg a lot. I think he'll be landing in the boxing. Yair can be outboxed. We've seen that before. I think Volk can mix in some grappling just to try to tire Yair, to try to prevent him from getting too comfortable on the feet and make him have to think about that the takedown could be coming at any moment. And I think Volk takes over the fight the later it goes. Could be a late finish. Could be decision. I'm going to say Yair can make it the whole 25, but I really think Volk wins all of the last 3 rounds of this fight, and maybe even one of the first 2. So I'll say it's like 48-47, maybe even 49-46. Yeah, I think I'm probably going to say 49-46, Volk, UD.
I will go next. I'm in the same camp as you, man. As electric as Yair can be and has been lately, and as much of a very intriguing stylistic matchup he presents for Volkanovski with his length, with his kicks, with his kickboxing. He's really more of a Taekwondo guy, right? Taekwondo is Yair.
Yeah, I mean, I would say so, just based off of the way he uses his legs. Yeah,
It's not Muay Thai. It's
no.
That being said, how do you pick against Volkanovski at this point, at this stage of his career, of his title run? The guy fights flawlessly. He's perfect in there at featherweight. In spite of his attribute disadvantages with his short stature, it doesn't matter. He has very good power for 145. He has incredible technique, safety. He manages distance so well. He's great on the ground. He's getting his hand raised. I'll say Volk, 5th round TKO against Rodriguez. Omar. Is it Viva Mexico?
With his boy.
No, guys.
Oh,
I alluded to this last week, I think, or even maybe the week before, but I love Yair. I will always love Yair. It's just this is a bad matchup for him. Like, even if we take aside the fact that Alexander Volkanovski is currently probably one of the greatest active fighters that there is, the skill sets that Volkanovski presents on paper just seem like real shit shows for Yair. And once you add the fact that Volkanovski is that fucking good, it gets even worse, right? I just think Volkanovski has a lot of power. The way that he enters, I think, as textbook as it seems, is something that people don't really do very well in the UFC or in MMA in general. Volkanovski is really good at just getting under those punches, just getting over your punches, being able to counter with overhands just over the shoulder. He's very, very good, and with the height disadvantage, I think he's been able to come up with a style that works well for his body type. And I think it fucks with a lot of people because it's a very rare thing to find in training partners unless you're going with somebody who's not your size. Volkanovski is this weird, like, stocky golem hybrid thing where he fights like a gigantic human being, but he's really not. Yair is going to be the type of fighter I think that's going to want to play distance, and I think Volkanovski's tenacity to push forward and close that distance is going to work more in his favor. I think if we go down to the ground, I think we've seen that Volkanovski, while he can get into trouble on the ground, it's going to be very difficult for him to be submitted and to be, I think, overrun on the ground. Even looking at Makhachev and what he was able to do and what he was able to not do in that fight, I think speaks volumes as to how this fight's going to go on the ground. I can't see anywhere that Yair is going to take significant edge over Volkanovski. Not in the striking, not in the ground, not in the submission game, not in the clinch. I don't see it, man. And like I said, I love Yair. I want to see it. I want to be like fucking Viva Mexico for the next 2, for Yazmin, for like for everything. But just realistically, man, I don't think this is the one for him, and it breaks my fucking heart because I love Yair as champion, and I've always wanted to see it, and I was happy when it happened.
Yep.
But I just think this is a really, really tall order, and I don't think he's going to get it done, man, as much as I would love to see it. I think Volkanovski is going to win the unanimous decision. I don't think he finishes Yair, but I do think he wins at least 4 out of the 5 rounds.
Okay. We all took Volk. I took him with the late finish. You guys both went UD. I cannot wait. This is going to be definitely a fight. Both co-main and main are both going to be fights where my palms are going to be very sweaty.
Oh, for sure. For sure. I just realized I went against both Mexicans. Mexico is not going to be pleased with my picks here.
It's okay. We get most of our viewers from Asia and the Middle East.
Yeah.
Hey, you never know. It depends on who's fighting. Maybe we'll get a Mexico viewing this week.
Maybe we will.
Nice.